didn't it? All right, I'm going to mute. Welcome on, Glenn. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, that was an interesting discussion you were having before. I have to tend to agree with you about this Virginia company and these various companies in the Crown. The thing is, I grew up in Canada. That's why I can say that I wasn't born or naturalized, because I wasn't. I wasn't under the 14th Amendment. I grew up in Canada. I claimed it by right of blood because my mother is American and from Oklahoma. And my mom and dad met in the shipyards in San Francisco. They were both welders during World War II. Anyways, little trivia there. The Constitution, though, is not doesn't create a corporation. It's a trust indenture, and the courts have talked about that. So the Constitution, even the Articles of Confederation, are a trust indenture. That's why treason is a breach of trust. If you look it up in a law dictionary, what a treason's a breach of trust. And because the Constitution's a trust indenture. And so they are entrusted with certain responsibilities, and that's why it's called treason. Anyways, what I was thinking about talking, unless anybody has any, does anybody want to do that Bivens thing?
Which Bivens thing? I second it, whatever. Sounds good.
I'm interested.
Okay, hang on a minute. Leah, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just pulling it up if you want me to go for that.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, Glenn, my parents met near the Alameda shipyards as well. Same kind of story. Mom was American.
Interesting.
Okay, here we go, everyone. This meeting is private. Bearing false witness, misrepresentation, and posting inflammatory rhetoric in public forums is forbidden and shall be addressed in an appropriate manner to eliminate all conflict and false allegations. Is there anyone in attendance at tonight's meeting that is a member or agent of any law enforcement agency of the federal, state, county, city, township agencies present? This is also for a notary, poll worker, school board member, anyone who has signed an oath to the de facto government. Raise your hand, say your name, and state your position. One second time. This meeting is private. Bearing false witness, misrepresentation, and posting inflammatory rhetoric in public forums is forbidden and shall be addressed in an appropriate manner to eliminate all conflict and false allegations. Is there anyone in attendance at today's meeting that is a member or agent of any law enforcement agency of a federal, state, county, city, or township agency present? This is also for a notary, poll worker, school board member, anyone who has signed an oath to the de facto government. Raise your hand, say your name, and state your position. Looks like we're all clear. One last time. This meeting is private. Bearing false witness, misrepresentation, posting inflammatory rhetoric in public forum is forbidden and shall be addressed in an appropriate manner to eliminate all conflict and false allegations. Is there anyone in attendance at today's meeting that is a member or agent of any law enforcement agency of a federal, state, county, city, or township agency present? This is also for notary, poll workers, school board members, anyone who has signed an oath to the de facto government. Raise your hand, say your name, and state your position. and God bless us all. Welcome, Glenn.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so and then my mother did a bunch of ancestry, and she found out that she had ancestors who were here prior to the War of Independence. And matter of fact, there's a story in my mother's maiden name is Winningham, and my middle given name is Winningham. And so, which is kind of interesting because when I go into the courts, they always like the federal court right now, I'm getting mail back from them as to GlennWinningham. But I always tell them it's GlennWinningham House of Fern. And anyways, which is kind of interesting because I always tell them that I wasn't born or naturalized, and Will Livingston, that ratified the Constitution for New Jersey, is my fourth great uncle. And I think that is just about as powerful as you can get as far as the law is concerned. I think it's about as powerful as you can get. Anyways, so what I was thinking about talking about tonight was land taxes. And I don't know, does anybody have anything else they'd rather talk about? I'm certainly open to ideas. I just thought about this here recently. So if someone has something else they'd rather talk about, I'm open to other things too. I'm recently going through a property tax issue. I had to file a lawsuit against, I did a common law judgment and I filed a lawsuit against them and attached the common law judgment. And a lot of this is, I certainly won't be the first one to say I don't know everything. And so we're using our making wags. I don't know if you know what a wag is. I've worked in aviation all my life, and I started out as a mechanic in the 70s and worked my way up into quality and then engineering. And I helped design the hydraulic system on the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. And so we had a little saying that we'd like to use. It's kind of an educated guess. It's called a wild ass guess, a wag. So the point being is that, so we make wags, we make a wild guess. It's based on, what we know and what makes sense. A lot of the stuff is just common sense, really. And so, I haven't been able to work since 2015. And so my attitude is if they're going to do that to me, then I'm going to spend my time dreaming up ways to break it off in their ass. And so I'm sure they know that's what's going on too. But so if nobody's got anything else you'd rather talk about, property taxes started in America in 1861. I don't know if you, I think what I'll do is I'll actually pull that act up. I wonder if I've got that in my hard drive or if I have to get my external drive up. Let's see. Yeah, property taxes in America started in 1861 with an act of Congress. And so they
Steve Emerson, Glenn.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, he's the one guy that I know that was able to successfully sue them and basically eliminate his property taxes.
Yeah, well, actually, there's quite a movement here in Texas. It goes back to the fact that they never followed their own codes. They never, ever followed their own codes, their own rules. They never follow their own requirements. and all you got to do is a little bit of research, and you start finding that stuff. And there's a guy that lives in Denton. Actually, there's a friend of mine. He's a disbarred lawyer. He contacted me because of my YouTube channel. He's from Canada too, and he is got some issues with property taxes, and I was helping him with doing my stuff. But he's a lawyer, and he did, his heart wasn't in that stuff, at least doing it the way I was doing it. And so he started doing his own thing. He's still dealing with it. I think they've actually filed a lawsuit against him, and he's responded the way a lawyer would, and they've gone silent. Matter of fact, I think he's going to do a motion to dismiss for failure to prosecute. So, but I don't know. At any rate, he got in touch with, I found out about this guy in Denton, and this guy in Denton is like a billionaire, and he owns a whole bunch of property in Denton. Denton is in the DFW area. Denton County is basically on the northern edge of the DFW area. If you go on the 35, coming into the DFW area, it splits in Denton County, and it goes 35W and 35E, and it goes through Denton County. And so Denton is the county seat, and there's a university there. I don't know what the population is there, but it's, a lot of people. Anyways, so this guy's a billionaire, owns a whole bunch of land up there, and he has discovered that they don't follow their own requirements. And the requirements that they don't follow are they're supposed to make an official appraisal. Okay, they're not supposed to just make a WAG. They're supposed to actually do an appraisal when they appraise your land and decide what your land is worth, and they don't. And so he just goes ahead and pays the taxes and then sues them and gets it all refunded. And that's just normal course of business for him, Of course, when you're talking millions of dollars, then it's worth it. And so with me, my property tax issue is like $200, Actually, with like 4 years, it's about $400. And but my attitude, I'm into principles and the law, and if they can take a penny, then they can take it all. Actually, if you understand the law, if they can take a penny, then it's theirs, all of it, and they can take it all. And so I, even if it's over a penny, quite frankly, I was paying the tax before. It was $16 a year, so that wasn't really worth the trouble. But now it's like they raised it a whole bunch, and then with the last few years that I've been fighting with them over, they filed a lawsuit, and then they denied me due process and all this other stuff. So I filed a counterclaim. Actually, it's a collateral attack, and we've talked about that in another week. It was, I can't remember which one, but we talked about this lawsuit that I was going to file. Well, I filed it, and so I'll get my external drive out, and I'll pull up that statute that talks about that.
Billionaire guy that he's not the attorney guy you were talking about, though. He probably hires attorneys.
Who's that?
Well, was the guy you were talking about that's a billionaire, is he the attorney?
No. He's the guy that the disbarred attorney found in his looking into this stuff. He found out about this guy, and and there's actually, I guess there's a big lawsuit going on right now over that very issue, the fact that they don't follow their own codes. And really, but really, to me, and under Texas law, it actually says that property has to be rendered. And in that rendition form, and I'll pull up that rendition form, it actually says in there that the chief appraiser can render property that's not under the Texas tax code. So they're basically saying that they can go ahead and render it. And there was the reason I even found out about that is there's a lady that contacted me that, because of my YouTube channel again, she was in a house that had been foreclosed upon 10 years ago, and she was still in this house. And she basically defeated him, or thought she had. And so what happened is she'd been out of work and she couldn't afford to pay the property taxes. It was like in a very expensive area. It's probably about a $400,000 house. And they were wanting, I don't know, I imagine it was probably about $10,000 a year. And so let me just share this rendition form, and then you guys can see it. So this is under Texas tax code. Says when required by a chief appraiser, a person must render owned or managed or controlled as a fiduciary. Okay, they're talking about the minor estate. And it's corporations or the minor estate. So somebody rendered my property. So that's what happened with this lady. She was telling me that she had gone down to the tax assessor and started reading the riot act to him. Who rendered my property for taxation? I'm going to sue their butt off. And immediately, they came back and said, don't worry, we'll take it off the tax rolls. Yeah, she told me about that. Anyways, see, they're talking about here, right here, it says the signature on this report must be notarized unless the person filing the report is a secured party as defined in the Texas tax code, the property owner, an employee of the property owner, an employee of the property owner on behalf of an affiliated entity of the property owner, or on behalf of the property owner who is rendering tangible personal property with a good faith estimate. So it's all corporate. They're talking about corporations here. It's corporate tax, really. And when you go into it, says the chief appraiser can render property. Where did I see that? That's not in the Texas tax code. It's not required to be rendered. Okay, this is the taxable, the personal property rendition. Let's see if there's another one. There might be another one. No, this would be the one, pretty sure.
By the way, what do they call it in Canada? Council rates or something?
Property
Oh,
tax.
this is general real property rendition. In Canada, it's called it's property taxes. In England, in the UK, it's council rates. Yeah. Anyway, see right here, I've got it underlined. The chief appraiser right here may require rendition that's not mandated by the tax code. So they're saying right there that the chief appraiser can render property even though the tax code isn't consider it taxable.
Your face.
And this is for general real property rendition, taxable property. Anyways, so this is all part of that lawsuit. I'm bringing that up in this lawsuit. And so let me see. I got to find that. 1861 Act of Congress. I'm going to pull that up next.
Was it the new Congress or the old Congress that walked out?
It'll be the new one. It's after. Is because of the Civil War.
And that's what they had in China, a civil war before, which brought in communism, I guess, you say October 1, 1949.
Right here, 12 stat. August 5th, 1861.
August 5th, 1861.
Yeah, here it is right here. 12 stat 292. An act to provide increased revenue for imports and pay interest on the public debt and for other purposes. Oh, hold it now. This might not be the one. Yeah, this is, well, let's keep looking here. See, it's apportioned, okay? Talks about it right here, Section 8, be it further enacted that a direct tax of $20 million be hereby annually laid upon the United States, and the same shall be and is hereby apportioned to the states respectively. Yeah, so it is that tax. It is right here. It says Section 9. Be it further enacted that for the purpose of assessing the above tax, that collecting the same, the President of the United States be and is hereby authorized to divide respectively the states and territories of the United States and the District of Columbia into convenient collection districts. Gee, that sounds like 10 federal regions. And to nominate by and with advice of the Senate to appoint an assessor and a collector for each district who shall be freeholders and resident with the same. They have to execute a bond, Section 10. So they have to inquire in about all lands, lots of ground with their improvements, buildings, dwelling houses made liable to taxation. Right there. That after the said direct tax laid by this act shall be assessed and laid on the value of all lands, lots of ground with their improvements, dwelling houses with several articles subject to taxation shall be enumerated and valued by the respective assessors at the rate of them is worth in money the first day of April, 1862. So the states are basically have to make statutes to impose it. It's imposed on the states, and then the states have to make And that's what the Texas tax code is in satisfaction of this. And if you keep going here, there's quite a bit of stuff in here, but the stuff that's that you see every day is stuff I've already talked about, and there's going to be more. There's a lot more stuff that you see every day. There's a board of equalization. This is all stuff that you see. Assessment, appraiser. Right. This is basically what I think is the beginning of 18 U.S.C. 242, violating your rights under the color of law. That each and every collector is deputy who is exercise or be guilty of any extortion or oppression under color of this act. That's 18 U.S.C. 242. This is the beginning of that act, of that federal statute. And they get a commission. They get 4%. Okay, upon the first $100,000, 1%. Upon the second 100, who knows what it is now? This was 1861. So they're motivated to go ahead and stick it to you if they can get away with it. See what I'm saying? And that's it for that one, I guess. August 5th, 1861. 313. I think it talks about the Board of Equalization and appraisals, appraisal districts. Let's go back to the beginning. It's an ad valorem tax.
Ad valorem, does that mean voluntary?
No, ad valorem means it's based on a percentage of the value of the property. So that's what they call them, a tax assessor collector, right? Prescribed by the Secretary of the Treasury. See, it falls under the IRS forms. They use the IRS forms. IRS codes. They follow the IRS codes, I should say. So it's Title 26 is the codes that they follow. So there's assessment districts, okay? So that's like right now I'm dealing with the Bowie, Montague County assessment district. And there's a board of assessment. There's also an equalization. And you see that in some states, and some states you don't. Or it might be called something else.
May I, Glenn?
Sorry?
I was just asking if I could add to that.
What do you want to add?
I was gonna say, I love this because when we're talking about the tax code, whenever you go through the tax code or the IRS forms, it'll reference whatever regulation. And then when you go to the regulation will reference the part of the congressional record, right? So
Right, that's true.
in the tax form, it'll say generally, like this is what everybody else is doing, but we're governed by this, by this part of the congressional record. And then when you go and take a look at it, you have more options than what they're generally doing. And people don't recognize that. They think they have to go by what the form says.
Right. Okay, so this is us talking about the Board of Assessors, and there is in every county a Board of Assessors. And there's a clerk of the Board of Assessors. So this is where it all got started. So it's by a federal act. That's why I did a collateral attack in federal court. And I filed a lawsuit in Arizona over property taxes in state court, and I added the Arizona Attorney General because I was throwing mud against a wall, right? And in Arizona, the Attorney General removed it into federal court. Although they didn't say anything about this or the fact that it originated as a federal act, what they said was that they were federally protected rights that I was claiming that they were violating. And they were.
Who was violating? They were, or we were?
Well, you have a right to own land. If you're a corporation, then you have to pay tax because the corporation itself is a franchise, but they can't tax people. That's why they have to get you in the Commerce Clause. That's why they use the minor estate. When they assault you, they spell the name in all block capital letters, and that's a minor estate under the Code of Federal Regulations. But on my deed, when I did my deed, I said that I'm not a corporation. I'm not a U.S. citizen, not an estate, that I'm a man. So I can't see how, you never know with these whores that are so-called judges what's going to happen, but I can't imagine how I can lose. But I've done it enough times.
Well, good luck with that. Yeah, good luck with that case. I was just going to say, it reminds me of the burning of London in 1666, the Civil War. It was 1861 when they say, okay, we'll start over from everyone's dead, or new names, all cap names, or whatever.
Right. Yeah, right. So they're making tax liens right here. It's what you see today. So I am suing every member of the Board of Assessors, and they also have an appeal board. I don't know who the chief appraiser is. They wouldn't. There's nothing anywhere that I can find showing who the chief appraiser is. So I'm suing them all, and because the chief appraiser I'm guessing the chief appraiser went and rendered my property. I don't know, but as a matter of fact, I'm going to go out there on Monday, and I'm going to tell them I want to know who rendered my property, who rendered my land.
What if you don't get a straight answer from them?
What the moon's made of cheese? I don't know. I'll see when it happens. Actually, that lady that told me about it said that they immediately said, "Don't worry, we'll take it off the tax rolls." But I've already filed a lawsuit against them. They've got the lawsuit now, and so they know they're being sued over this. So we'll see what happens. And that bought and paid for whore masquerading as a judge. Could have swore there was an equalization board here somewhere.
Control F5 maybe?
Sorry?
You try Control F5, but it might not work on that kind of a document.
Well, this is actually, I probably could, because it's searchable. Let's see.
Or is it Control F? I can't remember.
Yeah, it's Control F. See, the Board of Assessors, that kind of talks about equalizing right now the values of lands and lots of ground. But there was the Board of Assessors. Let's keep looking. There we go. Make out the equalization and apportionment. Board, make out equalization and apportionment. So I guess the Board of Assessors do the equalization. But there's some states that have equalization. They talk about it in the government offices, Board of Equalizations. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've heard about the national stabilization somethings. People mention something like equalization, stabilization. So the overlay of the property tax, is it like doesn't have to meet the meets and bounds by your definition, or it's all that's just off topic?
Well, when you bring forward all the rights and privileges of the land patent, but that's a separate issue. You know, when you bring forward all the rights and privileges of the land patent, ideally you should have a meets and bounds legal description. I mean, there's a bunch of things you have to do. You have to do a title search. But I've found that it depends on the corruption in the local government, because you can have defects in that land patent, and when you bring forward, and it'll still work. You know, because they'll see what you're doing and they'll leave you alone, basically.
For sure.
So I haven't really paid that much attention to strictly doing it all, like doing the title search and all of that back to the beginning. I mean, that's a lot of hassle. That's a lot of work. It's a huge amount of work. I actually did that for someone, and it was a huge amount of work. And that's why I doubt I'd do it, quite frankly. I did it for someone. I went and basically spent like about a week in the county records. But I did it, and so I know how to do it. But it's a huge amount of work, and I don't think it's really necessary, because if you show intent, it's what the intent is, and that kind of thing. You see what I'm saying? So, anyways. The point is that if they can take a penny, they can take it all. And that's why I fight them over it. Either you own the land or you don't. If they can take it, what happens is when they foreclose in their tax lien, then they'll just sell it, right? They sell it right out from underneath you. And then they do an unlawful detainer action. That's a renter. Don't get me going. You're going to get me going. So anyways, this is where it all began. Right here, it's 22 pages. This act of Congress in 1861. This is where it all started. Now, obviously, there's been things that have been added in and all that, and then the states have passed acts, in support of this. But this is where it began. So it's really a federal act. And that's where it comes onto the federal felonies. And I accuse them of involuntary servitude, a bunch of things. Forced me to work for them for nothing. If you're a corporation, corporations can't do involuntary servitude. What was that? Somebody was going to say something?
Yes, I was asking, may I ask a question?
Sure.
From some sourcing of information that I sourced a while back too. I was reading back in 1861 where at that time, when they had the Constitution around 1861, it had the name Confederate in it. Is that document that you're viewing now created around the same time? And was that one of the titles they use within the Constitution that was created in that time period?
Well, I think that if the Constitution then says basically the same thing it says right now, and I've got one open here. I'll do a search in there. Confederate. Let's see, this is, no state shall enter any treaty alliance or confederation. Okay, so that's not the same thing. All debts contracted and engagement entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. So then if you think about it, and there's people that actually make these arguments in court. This is Article 6, Clause 1, that that the government had a contract. The Articles of Confederation was a contract too, and so it basically engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution. So engagements, the Articles of Confederation is an engagement. And so what they're saying is the Articles of Confederation are still in full force and effect. They didn't get superseded or replaced by this Constitution. They're still there. And so, but that was like right from the beginning. Okay. Nothing changed about that in 1861. But what happened in 1861 is the Southern states walked out of Congress. This is August when this was approved by Congress. So August 5th, 1861. So again, go back to history and look at what happened. The Southern states walked out of Congress in 1861, and Lincoln ordered Congress ceased to have a quorum, so they couldn't operate. And Lincoln ordered them back under executive authority, and so this is that executive authority Congress that's operating right here, August. So I could probably pull up the
when they walk out. Maybe this is why they walked out, because of property taxes, generally speaking.
Well, while you're looking for that information, because the information that I found, I'm going to have to look it up again. It was uppercase U, lowercase s, Constitution, 8. Excuse me, the writings of it that they have is slightly different of what they have printed today, that particular one, but it talks about the Constitution of the Confederacy of 1861.
So this is the proclamation right here. I don't know if I'm showing this on my Telegram. No, I'm not. Okay, this is the proclamation that Lincoln issued on April 15th, 1861. Militia called out. Extraordinary session of Congress convened. Thursday, 4th of July. 15th of April, 1861. So let's see if it says when the Southern states walked out. Right. So they'd walked out before this. He doesn't really say. Called out 75,000 militia. So that's proclamation number 4. And then the next one is it talks about an insurrection. And that one was on the 19th of April, 1861. Another one on the 27th of April. Let's see what the third one is. This is the third one. Oh, this is Buchanan. Oh, well, shoot. March 4th, 1861. March 4th, receive and act upon such communion as be made by part of the executive. So he was the president. And then this other one, June 25th, 1860. Well, he's just ordering the Senate to convene. That's all. Doesn't really say. That's all, just ordering them to convene. But here, Lincoln's ordering the senators and the representatives. You know, I don't know as far as what you're talking about there. I don't know.
Yeah, there's just some information too that was also that surfaced too recently about the history, and even the supposed proclamation that supposedly Lincoln, that particular document, and I followed your channel quite a bit, and I'm also doing some investigation myself because there is a particular map of the United States where it shows the first 13 colonies. If it was facing, depending on which way you're sitting, on the would be the left-hand side, but if you're facing a particular way, it would be the right-hand side. And then the rest of the map of the United States, it shows where the Spaniards had owned the majority of the land from the West Coast all the way up until the Midwest states. And then it showed their division between where this the Louisiana Territory was from the upper portion of the tip part of the United States map, like where you go into Canada, all the way down to the bottom. But I'm going to get that information. Because it seems like there's new information that's been hidden, and some people are now coming out with the information because one of the talk is President Lincoln, apparently with the proclamation that was instituted, it was a lot of stuff that was done that they said he did not have authority to do, but I'm still trying to get further information on that. And once I do, I'll try to bring it forth and then have a viewing of it because someone is creating extensive history about how a lot of stuff was overlaid, and in the covering up of this particular history of the United States, how it was overlaid. But I just wanted to mention that I'm not taking up any of your time, but they did do a lot of research back within those years, and I was surprised to find out that at that time, the Constitution that they were talking about then had the name Confederacy in it, and I think that was where the creation of a lot of these documents, I believe, was in Philadelphia. I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I can tell you that the Constitution hasn't changed since, as far as I know, other than the amendments. I think it's been the same. Matter of fact, they had a style committee, and this Constitution that I have here, I'll even show it. It's one that I have checked for capitalization. Okay, and other people have checked it too, because it's got the same styles. The style committee means the capitalization, and I use this one because the capitalization is correct. If you go to the original Constitution, of course it's handwritten, but so you still have to go and look at the capitalization, but the capitalization is correct in relation to the original Constitution. That's why I use this one. Capitalization is important. And so that's why I use this one, because the capitalization is the same as in the original Constitution. They had a style committee, and their job was to decide what words were going to be capitalized and what words would not be. And so, that was when they wrote the Constitution. That was their sole job. So capitalization is very important, and so I want to make sure that I'm looking at it. That's why I use this one, because the capitalization is correct in relation to the original Constitution, and so. And I don't, this one, I just did a search for the word Confederacy, and the only place it is in Article 6. And so I'm not sure what you're talking about as far as calling it Articles of Confederation. If that's what you're talking about, I'm not sure. There's a lot of people that, say a lot of things, and unless I can, find evidence of what they're saying, there's a lot of people that have unproven theories, and
yeah, Confederacy is just another word for like union, right? Not really, but it is. And like the Alawara Indian, they had a confederacy, didn't they? And maybe we kind of borrowed that word as well, but the Alawara Confederacy, if I remember correctly. But
well, there was the Iroquois Confederacy.
Iroquois as well, yeah.
This particular information that I sourced was for March 11th, 1861. Is that the same information you have for the Constitution of the United States of America?
Well, this Constitution is one that is typed, obviously, but the capitalization is correct in relation to the original document. You'd have to go to the original document and compare, and a friend of mine actually did that, and that's the reason I use this one, because he told me that this one is correct, and so that's why I use it. And this friend of mine is really anal about that stuff. And so, it's good to be, pay attention to the details. I don't, the only place this one has the word Confederacy is in Article 6, Clause 2, or Article 6, Clause 1, and maybe that's Clause 1. But, the thing is that what they're doing is they're putting us under the Commerce Clause, and under the Commerce Clause, you have no rights. and they can do anything they want. And people think that they're ignoring the Constitution. Well, if you're under the Commerce Clause, they can. And so you don't want to be there. And so that's where I go with it, is I tell them that I'm not under the Commerce Clause, and if you have some evidence, otherwise you're violating my rights under the color of law, which is a felony. And I start filing felony criminal complaints against them. The Commerce Clause is a corporation that they like to assault you with that minor estate, 31 CFR 363.6, and that's really where it's all going to.
Concur with you, because in the viewing under Article 6, it does show 6 sections, and it does show the word Confederate States within that section. So I agree with you. And the style writing appears to be the same as what you have on the screen. So there's no disagreement, beloved.
Yeah. So at any rate, a friend of mine went and he's real anal about that stuff. And so, he went through it with a fine-tooth comb, and he's the one that gave me this one to use because the capitalization is in accordance with the original Constitution. It's amazing how many constitutions that you get, and they got the capitalization all screwed up. And so you gotta check that stuff and make sure you got the right one, because all of that's important. It's all important. And, the founders, when they wrote the Constitution, they had a committee that their sole purpose was to decide which words were going to be capitalized and which words were not. And so, and if there's anything I learned, is that most people have no idea what this Constitution says. They have no idea. They give up their rights under it at the drop of a hat. And, they don't know, they don't assert their rights. And once you lose them, it's, and you have basically a bunch of pirates out there that think they can do anything they want. And, if you don't assert your rights, you lose them. And So I always, that's why I bring up the fact that Will Livingston's my 4th grade uncle, because of this Supreme Court case. McCullough versus Maryland. And I'll share that, and we can go over it here real quick. This is the Supreme Court in let's see if that made it easier to read. I guess it didn't, did it? Oh, get real. There we go. No. Yeah, right there. So let's there. I'll bet that's easier to see. Yeah. All subjects over which the sovereign power of a state extends are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are upon the soundest principles exempt from taxation. This proposition may be almost be pronounced self-evident. It's obvious. The sovereignty of a state extends to everything which exists by its own authority or is introduced by its permission. But does it extend to those means which are employed by Congress to carry into execution powers conferred on that body by the people of the United States? We think it demonstrable that it does not. Those powers are not given by the people of a single state. They are given by the people of the United States to a government whose laws made in pursuance of the Constitution are declared to be supreme. Consequently, the people of a single state cannot confer a sovereignty which will extend over them. And that is just so powerful. This is that lawsuit that I filed. And that's one of the things I say. And the Supreme Court of the United States said it's impossible for the demandant to confer a sovereignty which will extend over him. So I didn't give you permission. And you're nothing but a bunch of thieves. I'm going to step away for a minute. I'll be right back.
That's what Andrew Jackson called them, a den of vipers.
Can someone unmute Glenn, please?
How?
Well, I muted him thinking that I could unmute him, and now it's not letting me.
I just did the same thing. I think I unmuted him, and now it's not unmuting either. Hope not.
Queen, can you assist on that?
Okay, I have him at 190%, but I don't hear anything. Who
Yeah, so
assists?
do I.
What's the matter?
I muted Glenn for that moment, and now it won't let me unmute him.
I don't hear him speaking either. I think his microphone's muted.
But he said he was stepping away for a minute.
Yeah, he said he was stepping away, and then I muted him, and now I can't unmute him. Glenn, if you're listening to me, can you unmute?
Why did you mute him? He has to unmute on his side.
Just for privacy issues.
Glenn, if you can hear us, please unmute your mic. If that doesn't work, then what? I'll be still not back yet.
Yeah, usually it just steps away for about a minute, so. Well, that was a screw up.
There we go. I didn't realize you weren't hearing me.
Sorry about that, Glenn. I muted you for privacy reasons, and then I couldn't unmute you.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think it was Jackson that shot and killed a man on the White House lawn. Speaking of Jackson. I think it was...
Was that 1930s or something? Wait, hold on. Let me check that year. Hold on. I think some of the information I found was that Andrew Jackson was around the year of 1830,
right.
around there, because the close portrait I found was in 1836.
Right. Yeah, that's about right. So anyways, all of these taxes are actually corporate taxes, and they use that minor estate to assault you with it.
What was 1930?
It was 1830s, and that was Andrew Jackson. That's when they got rid of the National Bank of the United States. Got rid of it, and it took them 100 years to get it back. And they are a bunch of vipers. They're bringing the District of Columbia outside 10 miles square in violation of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. So does anybody have anything else they want to talk about tonight?
Well, the only other thing that I found out about 1861 is that Abraham Lincoln around that time, and I think, as you said, beloved, with the that specific constitution around the year 1861 is where, and I'm not sure, I'm still sourcing the information, I believe where martial law was instituted around that time when Lincoln wasn't, apparently he was in office, and that's when also the institution of the proclamation.
Right. Well, and he did impose martial law. I mean, that's when the southern states walked out of Congress and they ceased to have a quorum, that's when the martial law started.
He was provoked.
Well, it's hard to say. Lincoln, I put it in my lawsuit that, he couldn't have taken office if that 13th Amendment was there, and I think that he might have facilitated its disappearance so that he could take office, because otherwise, he's a lawyer. I don't think he could have taken office.
So not all of our forefathers were lawyers. So
that's true.
Mine were noble countrymen for the King of Ireland. So, our forefathers were not supposed to be liars.
You got that right.
So, and I don't want to change the subject, and if anybody has any more questions on that, then bring them forward. But last week, I'd mentioned about the 1020 form. If there's some info you could dump on us for that, because there's been some folks that have mentioned that after we've spoken about it only briefly on our talks here on Friday night. So if you can set aside some time soon to talk about that, or if you can do that now, I just don't want to, change the subject on the Constitution, because we could go on that all day and still people would get good education. So I leave it in your hands.
We can go on to that if you want, into Form 1020s. We weren't, what we were talking about is property taxes and land taxes. Let me say that, land taxes. And I think we pretty well covered everything that needed to be covered about that. Unless somebody has questions, but if we can move on to the Form 1020, if everybody wants to talk about that, that's fine.
Glenn, the only question that I have before we move on is that I'm aware that some of these states utilize what is called the Mason Manual, and it's also written, there's a style writing that is used in the Mason Manual. Would you say that would equate to that particular Constitution of 1861, as well as the congressional document that you viewed or that you showed us today? Are you able to answer that question before we move forward? That's the only question I have, beloved.
Well, that act was just an act of Congress in 1861, and I really think that the the Civil War was orchestrated by Masons. The Confederate general, what's his name? He was a Confederate general. He was a big-time Mason, and he wrote Morals and Dogma. And he was a Confederate general. He was a Satanist. And I think the Masons are, generally speaking, a lot of people don't realize what they're getting mixed up with when they get involved in the Masons. And I think that the Masons it's a satanic organization. Albert Pike was a Confederate general. He wrote Morals and Dogma, and he talks about that. In there, he talks about the pure light of Lucifer. And so they're Satanists. And if there was, Masonic influence, there was Masonic influence right from the beginning. Many of the founding fathers were Masons. And that's, I think, one of the reasons they knew a lot of the stuff that they knew. But I don't think that they were necessarily Satanists. I think there's a lot of people that get mixed up in that, and they don't really know what they're getting mixed up in. And it goes back to the Jesuits and the Vatican and all of that stuff too. And that's really where the buck stops, is it just all goes back to the Vatican. And that's what I talk about in my book too. And in my book about Trump, it's the satanic nature of the Vatican and the stuff that the atrocities that they're responsible for. And so that's all in my book. I think it's pretty well documented in there, although I'm sure there's atrocities that they're involved in. They're responsible for all the slavery. There's a Dum Diversas, which was a papal bull that said that you can go ahead and enslave anybody that's not Catholic. And that's what they did. That's what they did. I mean, the conquistadors, when they the stuff they did, they just killed people, and destroyed that Incan Empire. And there was actually a lot of reason to believe that there was a huge civilization in Brazil. Nowadays there's all sorts of ruins all over the Amazon jungle, from a huge civilization that was in Brazil at that time and that got destroyed. And they say it was because of the diseases that the Europeans brought with them, and that's entirely possible. But, at any rate, there's no doubt that there was Masonic influence. Now, I don't believe that they were all Satanists. I think they probably didn't know the depths of the depravity of where this Masonic stuff was taking them. My father-in-law was a Mason. He was like a 32nd degree or something like that. So, I mean, I would have these magazines published by the John Birch Society, and he'd be reading those things, and he says that stuff's happening, and he would agree with it completely. And so he's passed away now. I don't think he was by any stretch a Satanist. He was a pretty good guy, but and my mother-in-law, she was in the Eastern Star, which is another, Masonic organization. And I think she was a social thing. It was a social thing for her, going out and meeting with the girls and having fun. And I don't think she was Satanist, but she was definitely mixed up in that stuff. There's a lot of people that are mixed up in it, and they don't know the nature of what they're involved in. And but then there's a lot of them that are, that they're ruthless, So anyways, so as far as the Form 1020 is concerned, we're having pretty good successes with it. There's some of it is a work in progress. We're trying using it on secured loans. It works really good on unsecured loans. The bankers won't ever admit, anything, but you can use your completed Form 1020 process and send it to the credit bureaus, and they'll take the negative stuff off the credit report. So it works. And they'll never sue you over it. Once you do that, they'll never sue you over it. And you can actually do that with judgments. I've done it in the courts where, like with the Fifth Circuit, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, I filed a Form 1020 for the filing fee. And when I finished the process, the final notice of default, they sent me the scheduling order. And that's what they send you when you pay the filing fee. So the point is that the Form 1020 works pretty good, but they're not going to let on. You're going to have to just grind them through your system and finish, do the 3-step process. And that's why I like to invite the lawyers, because then you can file bar grievances against them. But it actually works pretty good. Right now we're doing it. I've got a secured lien with my car. And I've been doing it with my car. I know other people are doing it with vehicles, secured liens, and they're not just rolling over. And so I have a car loan with Toyota, and they just sent me a notice of intention to accelerate. Well, so that means that they'll send me a demand letter, and that'll be perfect, because then I can send them the Form 1020. Tell me what to pay. I want to pay it. And so they haven't sent me the demand letter, so we'll see what happens. That's perfect. But it's a risk. You got to understand it's a risk, and you got to know how the process works. I've never been through where somebody repossessed my car. I just paid the payments and paid it off. And so this is the first time I've ever done that. I've done with credit cards, but not with those are unsecured. So you really don't have any risk. And the only risk is that they'll sue you over it. And when you do that, there's no way they're going to try and sue you. Matter of fact, I'm helping a friend of mine that did get sued. And what we did is we didn't do the Form 1020. What we did is she got a lawsuit for, I think it's about $30,000, and we sent them back. We responded. We denied all the allegations. We want to see the contract, but what we'll do also is we'll get an officer of the bank and a CPA on the stand. We'll prove that you didn't loan me anything or loan her anything, and we'll ask these 160 questions and prove you didn't loan anything. So far they've gone completely silent. I did that actually at other times myself, and it worked great, except that what I did was I got a demand letter. This is after the demand letter. This is when they're suing you. And so this is a little bit different stage of the proceedings. But we sent them the 160 questions, and no problem. We intend to prove that you didn't loan anything. And then also we're gonna want to see the contract. And there's no contract. There's a friend of mine actually that beat it on the contract with a credit card, because that application form is not a contract. And so you can beat it on that too. There's a friend of mine that did beat it on the contract, because the application form is not a contract, and then sending you notices is not a contract. And so that's, once you understand that, that's easily defeated too. But so it's not a contract. The application form for the credit card is not a contract. There's not two signatures on it. Offer, acceptance, consideration. And so again, you have to bring up the right issues. And so where's the contract? I want to see the contract. You don't argue anything else. You just stick to that. And then the 160 questions. We intend to prove you didn't loan us anything. And so they've gone completely silent. This one, we'll see. You just never know how it's going to work out. These lawyers lay awake at night with this stuff. But
is there a lot to pay up on your Toyota? Like, is it a larger loan over 30,000 where they might have more incentive to bite?
Sorry, run that by me once more.
Well, what you said, you sent in a 1020 for your Toyota. So is that a recent loan, or is that something that you've had for quite a while?
Well, I've had the Toyota now for a couple of years, 3 years, and I've been making payments. But what I did was, there's this guy that had this procedure where you can pay it off, and where you use the statement they put on the bottom of their bill. They give you a coupon, and you can turn that into a money order and send it back to them and pay it off. And so what happened is they sent me letters back saying this is fraud, and so I mean, they're the ones that are involved in fraud. So I figured, okay, if you want to play that game, then what they did is they stole the money, in my opinion. Matter of fact, there's a friend of mine that a lawyer actually told him that they had used that coupon to pay off a mortgage, and the lawyer for the mortgage company said flat out, he said, you might have paid it off, but you got no way of enforcing it. So they admitted it. So they're just nothing but a bunch of thieves. So anyways, they're accusing me of fraud, and so I figured, okay, no problem. I did the Form 1020 process, and they didn't respond, and and then they sent me a notice of intent to accelerate, and so then I figured, well, I didn't think about it, so I went and paid up the loan, got it paid up, and but then I was thinking about it, and I was thinking, man, I should have not paid that. I should have not done that. And so now what I did was I went ahead and I just quit making payments, and now they sent me another notice of intent to accelerate, and what'll happen is when they they'll send a demand letter. Okay, if they're going to accelerate the loan, then they have to send a demand letter, and they'll say, we accelerated the loan, now you don't owe it all, and we want this amount of money, and we want it now. You got 30 days, and so perfect. That's the Form 1020 time. That's when they accelerate it. That's what they're going to do. They'll send you a demand letter. Accelerating the loan means that they call a whole balance due. We want it all now. We're not going to loan you any money anymore. We want it all now. And so they have to send me a demand letter. So perfect. And the demand letter comes from lawyers. So perfect. So then the lawyers, and then I can file bar grievances against the lawyers. And anyway, so we'll see what happens. I'm waiting for the demand letter. Send me the demand letter. I want the demand letter.
Is that one of your YouTube videos, the demand letter?
No. This one, it'll be this one. This will be a YouTube video.
There you go. Good. Awesome.
So anyways, so we'll see what happens, There's a guy that I was helping with his mortgage, and he probably got the same response. I haven't heard a peep out of him, but I don't want to tell him, what he's going to have to do if this works, then what he's going to have to do. And I don't want to tell him to go ahead and just make the payments, because they'll send you a demand letter, because that's a risk. And so I want to make sure it's going to work. First of all, I want to make sure, absolutely certain, before I go and tell someone else to do it, that at least it worked for me. It's not going to be an unproven theory. It'll be an unproven fact. It'll be a proven fact. Let me put it that way, not an unproven anything. And so I want it to work for me at least. And before I tell him to stop making his mortgage payments, you know what I mean? So we'll wait and see what happens with me, and then I'll be able to tell this guy what worked for me. I'm not going to tell him to stop making his mortgage payments in any circumstance. I'll just tell him, look, this is what worked for me. If you do it at your own risk, but this is what worked for me in it, and this is what happened. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's fair. Like, you can't, tell anybody anything other than what you would do. Not even a liar says any different than that, Glenn. So,
Yeah.
So, but no, I appreciate you bringing that forward about that form, and I will. I'm gonna test the waters out here in Canada, where the average vehicle or truck to do a tradesman type of job is running about 120,000 right now. So pretty much if you're going to buy a truck like that, you have to put a second mortgage on your home in order to, well, basically, pay the bills, right? 120,000 for a vehicle. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, no joke. My brother in Canada he was getting sued. What he did is he did the Form 1020. And I told him it's got the Uniform Commercial Code in it. So you have to be careful. You're going to have to find equivalent Canadian citations to use in that document. Don't use the UCC stuff, because they see that and they'll know that you're using a US document and they'll ignore it. And it'll make it a lot more difficult. So don't do that. You find equivalent Canadian court citations or Canadian statutory citations that you can use. If you do, send it to me so I'll have it, because then I can share it with other people. But
I get that quite easily now with AI. But mind you, I do my book work too, because they're normally from the source that they want you to know, right? So I'll get different sources. So yeah, I'll send that off to you.
Now, also, my brother got sued by Bank of Montreal, and my brother lives in Alberta, and he had done the Form 1020, and it seemed to work until the lawyers got a hold of it, and they said, you're using Uniform Commercial Code, that's U.S., so we're going to ignore it, and we're going to go ahead and sue you over this. And so my brother did a bunch more research, and he found out that they had securitized it and sold it, and he found out a bunch of stuff that they dropped it. And so if anybody is interested in contacting my brother, I can see if he wants to talk to you and tell you what he found out about it. And if you're in Canada, I can put you in touch with him, or I'll see if he will, or if he'll tell me what exactly he found out. But they dropped. It was a $65,000 lawsuit, Canadian. They were suing him. It was unsecured. It was a credit card. But yeah, they sued him and they dropped it because he went and started pointing shit out. And all of a sudden they decided that they didn't want to mess with it anymore.
Great. Did he throw FDIC stats in there? Because I know they don't like talking about that.
I don't know exactly. He did say something about it being securitized and how it was done and all that stuff. And once he found out about it, and once he did that, they dropped it. But so it's not like they have a lot to steal from him anyways. He's been out of work for a long time. And so he's in pretty bad shape right now, health-wise too. But if anybody wants to find out, let me know, and I'll see what I can do to get that information for you.
That would be great. That's especially up here in communist Canada. We need all that support we can get.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's rabble-rousers up there, just like there is here, and my brother's a rabble-rouser. I come from a long line of rabble-rousers, and so it's a networking thing, right?
Absolutely. That's how I found you back in 2018.
There you go. So the Form 1020, if you're going to use it in Canada, you need to modify it, take the court citations and the Uniform Commercial Code citations out of it, and find the equivalent Canadian stuff. And but it should still work as long as you do that. They saw that, the lawyers saw that, and they knew that it was U.S. And so they basically confronted him and said, that's U.S. you're getting, and so we're going to ignore it, and this lawsuit's proceeding. And so he pointed out some more stuff, and the problem went away.
Yeah, I know some folks that have stumbled on those same circumstances also, and the way they combated it is through putting everything on a non-UCC statement. So I guess a non-UC is unsecuritized, but at least it has it recorded in the county up here.
You know, I've never heard of non-UCC, but I've heard of Personal Property Security Act.
I'll see if it's equivalent. That's a good point.
There is a Personal Property Security Act in every province in Canada, and I've heard of that. And I know there's some of the stuff in the Uniform Commercial Code that's in there, but it's a different, it's found in a different format. But Canada is part of the UNIDROIT group of countries. So it flows down from UNIDROIT. But, you know, just making a statement, you got to do more than just make the statement. You got to show where it is. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, you have to point it out and make sure that they know you know.
Yeah, and the stuff that they don't want to bring up when it comes down to court. So you bring that shit up before, and they'll let it die because they don't want that coming out in court. Because they'll have it.
Yeah, is it necessity or a necessity to ask for a total squash of the case, or is it just leave it alone? Don't bring it up again.
Sorry?
Should we be asking for a complete dismissal, or I know there's another word, but we don't want that on in our records, right?
Well, they'll dismiss it, they'll drop it, it'll all disappear. If you do it right, that's what'll happen. It'll all disappear.
Now, what is this Form 1020? I've been searching, and I come up with a Social Security SSA document. What are you talking about?
Well, Glenn designed it himself and created it, so think about how Odessa always tells us to create our own forms. That's what Glenn does.
Yeah, but I'm kind of tossed in between on that, because if it's got an OMB number, that means they have to pay attention to it, right, and process it. If it doesn't, they don't have to. So there's that aspect of it too. I'm not sure, because like we're not really using these things as living men and women and stuff, and we're filling them out. They can only see the fiction, if you will, right? So I don't know. I don't really have a problem with using their forms if it gets the job done.
Actually, the Form 1020 is a homemade form. I didn't make it. Kerry Zolman made it. He's a brilliant guy that definitely thinks outside the box, but he made it up. And he is a guy that I don't know how many of you have heard of Kerry Zolman. He was indicted back in the 90s, along with about 40 other people, for willful failure to file and, you know, IRS issues. And his last name begins with a Z, so he was the last one to go to court. So they came and got him, and he was ready, and he was in Houston at the time, and they flew him to Dallas, and it took him 8 hours just to get his name out of him. Anyways, he basically turned a court into a circus, and he basically pointed out that if you look in the privacy statement of the 1040 booklet, instruction booklet, it says that our authority to collect this information is found in, and it'll give you about 3 sections in the Internal Revenue Code. And if you go and look those sections up in the parallel table of authorities, which is in any U.S. code book in the law library, you look it up in the parallel table of authorities, and those sections are found in Title 27 United States Code, which means that they don't have any authority. Title 27 United States Code is alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. So they don't have authority. They don't have enforcement authority in Title 26. And so he was acquitted. They went and picked him up, and he was in his pajamas. And so he left the courthouse in his pajamas, and the taxi drove up, and he said, "You the guy just beat the IRS?" And he said, "Yes, it is." And the taxi driver says, "The ride's on me," and took him to the airport. And his wife had gotten him a ticket, and he flew home in his pajamas. And so the point is it's a homemade form. It's not me. And even to this day, if he goes down to the federal building, he lives right here. I saw him today. And if he goes down to the federal building here in Fort Worth, they'll see him. And like a lot of times, he'll go there to help someone. Maybe they have an audit, or maybe they have IRS has got issues with them or something. He'll go with them. And as soon as they see him, they say, "You get the hell out of here." And they tell the guy that is with him to get the hell out too. And the guy's problems all go away. And so it's amazing how good that works. So they don't want to talk to him anymore. And so he's really brilliant about this. He thinks outside the box. So it's Carrie Ullman's form, I got to say. I never take credit for it. It's a homemade form, though. And the idea of having a form is it's a legal document. And it's to build a case. And so it's not a government form, just a homemade form. And you just say, "Tell me what to pay. I want to pay it. Tell me what to pay." And only your lawyers can answer, because I need to know how to lawfully and completely pay for this. You want payment. Your document says payment, okay? Well, I need to know how you want to be paid. And only the lawyers can answer, and they will never answer. And so you just put them into default, and under the Uniform Commercial Code, when you offer to pay and they don't accept it, it's paid. It's discharged. Technically, that's what happens when you use Federal Reserve notes, because they don't pay anything. Federal Reserve notes don't pay shit. And bank notes, Bank of Canada notes, they don't pay shit. They discharge debt with limited liability. That's what they do. And so they're securities, okay? And so they're securitizing that stuff, and they're doing all sorts of stuff with it. And so that's why they want them. And so that's why when you point that out, they'll never answer, and they're screwed. So anyways, that's the story about that.
How do we find the wording for the form then? Like, how could we get a template possibly for something like that?
Well, I can upload the form if you want.
Yes, please.
You want me to upload it to the group?
Yes, I'd like to take a look at it for my son's truck. automobile. What am I saying?
I think I uploaded it once already.
Okay, I'll search it out and bring it to the forefront.
Can you, let's see here. Well, if it's there, it's a long time ago. I'll just upload it right now. This is one I did with the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. You don't necessarily need it to need to send it to that many people, but I like to send it to the lawyers. This was to the Fifth Circuit, and after I was done with it, they sent me the scheduling order. So,
it doesn't get ignored.
No. Well, they'll never admit it. It does. I mean, they'll never, ever admit. They never admit anything. Okay. They never admit anything. They just, it's like you're sending it to the wall.
Some start to try to be your friend.
And I'll send you a completed package so you'll see how I put it all together. With the proof of service, the post office proof of service.
Nice. That's going to help out a few folks.
Okay, well, it's coming right now. So there's the 3 Word documents, and then the final, the package, PDF. And it shows you how I put it all together. You're basically building a case.
And I'm going to find out the equivalent to the UCC in Canada for that.
Well, at least where the sites that he uses in that book, in that Form 1020, see where it's used, see if you can find something comparable in Canada. You see what I'm saying? Either that or just take the UCC stuff out. You can just take it out, just remove it. And, but so, and that would be for the, the Form 1020. Most of the stuff is just common sense. It's plain common sense. The courts have ruled, there's no court cases. I don't think there's any court cases. It's just, you want me to pay, and so I need to know how to lawfully and completely pay. You're saying pay. I want to pay. Tell me what to pay. So instead of Federal Reserve notes, you change them to Bank of Canada notes. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's easy stuff. No, that's good. But you don't think that citing any CFR code or USC 151681N is necessary, or I think it's A?
Don't put any U.S. codes in there at all. If you're going to change it to Canadian, reference similar codes. If you're going to do that, make sure that I wouldn't put anything U.S. in there because that it'll be a waste of time.
Yeah, they say if you bracket it on each side, it takes it off the page, but it really doesn't, does it?
Well, they can still see it there. They see that this is a U.S. document, and so they'll ignore it. Or there's the risk. They may or may not, okay? But there's the risk that they will, and they did in the past. So I wouldn't do it. It's up to you. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You got to decide. But it's up to you. I wouldn't do it. I would just either take out the U.S. court or statutory citation. If you have to, just remove it, or put in an equivalent Canadian one if you can find it.
A lawful reference of some sort that's relates to a case up here.
Well, we've been going for a couple hours now. Is there anything else anybody wants to talk about?
Well, I so appreciate you bringing up the 1020. That's really been a good refresh for some folks and good insight for others. So I'm going to be testing those grounds up here.
Yeah, well, it's best to do it. Well, try it on all sorts of things. I mean, it works great. Let me tell you. But the only time, and my brother used it in Canada, and it was actually working until these lawyers got a hold of it and they noticed that, and that's when they started to ignore it. But it was actually working initially, and then they noticed that, and they went ahead and sued them. So that's the point, is that I wouldn't risk the potential of getting sued. If you're gonna do it, all you got to do is, most of it, there's actually not very many U.S. citations in there. It's all general law stuff, and so just change the U.S. citations to something else, to Canadian ones, or remove them. Period, and you'll be just fine.
Or could you, Canada falls under the ICCPR, International Covenant for Civil and Political Rights, or the United Nations? Could you quote some of those?
Canada and the U.S. both do, but and Canada falls under the Rome Statute, okay, which is war crimes, and so I would, I actually, my brother. I'm helping my brother. We're going to file some war crimes complaints in Canada.
That I have, what you mentioned something about the lawyers went after that particular 1020 form. What did they see within that form that they thought they need to go and made an adverse attempt to try to make it so that they thought that form was not a valid form to be used within their processes?
They saw the Uniform Commercial Code citations in it. It was actually working until they saw that, and it was probably some lawyer that it was working. All the lawyers were going along with it, and some lawyer found that and noticed it, and that was the end. And so you cannot, and if you're going to do it in Canada, don't use U.S. court citations, U.S. Statutory citations. They don't apply in Canada.
Well, Glenn, none of these documents that I've looked at, all four of them, and they're all like proof of service, and there's a single paragraph about the Roman coat thing, but I don't see anything about any reference to any codes or any form or anything. It's just proof of service stuff.
You're looking at the Form 1020s? Is that what you're looking at right now?
Yeah. Those four documents that you uploaded. And the first one I looked at was a PDF. Didn't see anything in that.
I know.
I looked at the other 3 Word documents, and they were not really nothing but proof of service stuff either. So
it's mostly that. It's mostly that, but I'm just opening it up right now, so I'll read it to you. The parts that are a problem. Okay, this is the Form 1020. On paragraph 2, on page 2, it says, does the statement refer to consideration or obligations or other securities of the United States directly or indirectly? I would change that to Canada. Paragraph 3, does the competition of this alleged clerk letter require consideration or obligations or other securities of the United States? I'd change that to Canada. And then it goes on. It says, most individuals can complete this form in 3 minutes. You're required by law. And it references UCC 3-104 and 3-115. I would either take that out or put in something comparable in Canada to complete this form. Before any payment may be made as a private corporation, you're assumed to know the law. And so they're all private corporations. The rest of it is yeah, that's the only place that really talks about the UCC is right there. You're required by law to complete this form. UCC 3-104 and 3-115. So what I would do is look up those Uniform Commercial Code sections and then find something comparable in Canada and take that out of there. Because they're going to see that. And that's really the only place that it talks about it. And that's on the Form 1020 itself. The other ones are just one-page letters is all they are. And you attach it all, put it together with proof of service and all the rest of it. So then paragraph 1, you must pay district court. What does the number 505 refer to? Check 1, obligations of the United States government. Well, and so then I change that to obligations of the government of Canada. National bank currency. I'm not sure what I would do with that. I'm not sure if there is a national bank currency in Canada. I'll bet there is. Bonds, certificates of indebtedness, Federal Reserve notes. I'd change to Bank of Canada notes, bills, or other. Explain. That's how I would change it if it was me. And but most of the stuff, you can just read through it and tweak it a little bit, and you're good to go.
Yeah, your brother had success, so that gives me hope.
It was working,
It looks like the let's see. The only thing, Article 9 exists in Canada. Is adopted as the Personal Property Security Act. Have you guys ever heard of that?
I've heard of it.
Well, there's correlation to Article 9 anyways. I don't know where else to look, but there's a start.
Yeah, Glenn mentioned that earlier.
Yeah. But the rest of it all is the same. They're all private corporations.
Or you might, they've got to be using it, right? They're hiding it like more deviously than they are here, I guess. But they've got to be using it. So why don't use the language without using the code?
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's what I would do. If it was me, if I couldn't find a statutory, if I couldn't find something equivalent to UCC 3-104 and 3-115, I just delete that part of it out. And then I'd say, you are required by law to complete this form before any payment may be made. That's what I would do.
It doesn't mention anything about penalties of perjury.
Actually, first of all, it's a lawyer that's going to fill it out, right?
You mean
And
a
it says
liar?
here, I am an attorney. Yeah, a liar. You're right. I'm an attorney at United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, a private corporation. I read the foregoing Form 1020 and know it to be true, correct, complete, and not misleading in any way. I declare on a penalty of perjury that the foregoing is true and correct. So the lawyer fills it out. That's why they'll never fill it out. And that's where you get them, right? You give them 15 days, and I always give them a little extra because I want to seem like I'm giving them extra time. So I always give them a little extra, and then I'll send them the notice of default. I use this thing with the IRS, and I didn't even have to go through all 3 steps. And they sent me a letter and said, since you're such a good customer, we're going to forgive you.
What were they trying to get you on? Facetious filing or what?
No, it was actually a company. I manage a company called American Engineering Services. That's how I work. So when I worked on the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program, it was American Engineering Services that was working, and I have a compensation for labor contract where they agree to pay me gold or silver coin. So, they in 2015, that's my last job that I had. I worked for about 6 weeks, made about $10,000, and then got laid off. And the IRS, I didn't file a tax return, or American Engineering Services didn't file a tax return. And so what happened is they fined me $450. And that was in 2015. And I ignored it. But then in 2020, around the coronavirus thing, they started sending certified mail. So I knew they were going to seize my bank account or something. And I figured, well, I better do something. And so I sent them the Form 1020, and that was in January of 2020 when all of that lockdowns were happening. So then in June of 2020, they sent American Engineering Services a letter and said, we've got your letter. We're kind of backed up. We'll respond soon. And so then in September, I got a letter from them, and it said, since you're such a good customer, we're just going to forgive you. American
That was
Engineering
a
Services.
happy day. You and Carrie must have had a good laugh over that.
Well, Carrie didn't know about it, but that's been that was during the lockdown, and I haven't worked since then. And but it was great evidence. And American Engineering Services has never ever paid the IRS anything, believe it or not. Never, ever, ever. Because American Engineering Services is set up as a partnership. And so all it files is a 1065 tax return. And that's it. Which a 1065 tax return is a reporting only tax return. Never, ever pays anything. And so all it does is report. It says that this was my income, this was my expenses, this is my net profit or loss. These are the partners. This partner gets this percentage. This partner gets this percentage. And that's it.
Yeah, engineers up here in UBC, you know what they do every year at graduation, right? They're always doing something crazy, like hanging a Volkswagen off of the bridge, or they always do something to make themselves known. So I can imagine doing that to the tax man would be nothing for them.
Yeah, well, I've never had any trouble with them. One time when I filed the tax, I filed the wrong Schedule K, and they sent me a notice that I got a $1,200 fine because I used the wrong Schedule K. But they said if I use the right one, they'll forgive me of the fine. So I said, okay, well, that's easy. I did the right one. That was easy.
Can you recall which was the right one to do?
Well, a Form 1020, like I said, is a reporting tax return. And so the Schedule K is where you report. In other words, you attach it, and each Schedule K is for each partner. And so you have a Schedule K for this trust that's one of the partners, and another Schedule K for an LLC. So you fill out their particular information, and then their percentage of the tax or loss, of the income or loss. You see what I'm saying? That's all it is. It was just the wrong Schedule K. It was, I don't know, I mean, I didn't know there's more than one Schedule K, but I guess there is. And I used the wrong one. And so they they told me which one to file. And so I did. And it was no problem.
So everybody should claim to be engineers on their tax return.
Well, no, I don't claim. American Engineering Services is just a limited liability company. It doesn't claim to be anything. It's just a limited liability company. And my compensation is, what I do is I get a separate sheet of paper, a blank sheet of paper, and I put it under miscellaneous deductions, right? And so there's a bunch of miscellaneous deductions like utilities and postage and vehicle expenses and compensation for labor. And mine is compensation for labor. And that was $65,000.
Do you use the word exemption tax?
No, I don't. Why?
Well, just
Why would I?
everything that we make is an exemption tax because, you know, none of us have any funds in our nest eggs anymore. It all goes out to, you know, to live.
Well, you know, compensation for labor has to do with the Declaration of Independence. And it says in there that we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the pursuit of happiness is defined by the courts as getting compensation for labor. So I've never had any trouble. Again, I like to use the words that the law allows me to use. Exemption tax, I've never heard of such a thing.
I've just seen it on some of the tax forms, so that's why I just brought that word up. So, no, it's easy for us not to pay any tax because we don't have any income that provides the tax to pay. So,
well, actually, income is corporate profits, according to the Supreme Court.
Another good point. Yes.
So it's all corporations. It's all corporate. Matter of fact, there's Carrie Zollman shows people how to file a case with the tax court, and the tax court will respond with, it'll be it'll be an assistant U.S. attorney for small business. They will respond for the IRS's, on the IRS's hide, the small business division. You see what I'm saying? That's who responds for the tax court. It's small business. It's all corporate. anyways, I think we're about done today. Thanks for everything, and I'm glad you guys got something out of this. And I think I'll just go ahead and I'll upload this thing to YouTube. And I'm going to be doing a Northeast Private Information Share in Ocean City, New Jersey. It will be happening from let me look. Got to look at my calendar. Oh, it's right here. It'll be, sorry?
Are you going to be driving there, or are you flying? How are you going to?
I always drive. I don't like getting groped. It'll be the 25th, 26th, 27th of October, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of November, and the 8th, 9th, and 10th of November. So it'll be 3 weekends in November. There are 3 weekends, last weekend in October, and first 2 weekends in November. And it'll be at Ocean City, New Jersey. So if anybody wants to come, it's 2 blocks from the water, and you can stay for free. You pay the admission, and you stay for free on the beach for 3 weeks if you want. If you're there for all 3 weeks, and you go down. It's 2 blocks. They have bikes there. You can. I go and ride bike. I usually go about 5 miles a day on the bike on the boardwalk, and ride up and down the boardwalk and enjoy the salt air. And sometimes it's gorgeous and sometimes it's not. You get storms and stuff. But yeah, put my foot in the Atlantic Ocean.
Nice. Sounds like a good way to spend October and November.
Yeah.
Ocean City. So there's a big marina there, I imagine, correct?
Well, it's mostly beach, but there is a bunch of. It's a sandbar. It's an island that is covered with city, but there's marinas and stuff around there for sure. Summers Point, there's a lot of cities and stuff around there that are all on the water, and there's a lot of houses that have a boat in the backyard, or actually in the boat in the back that's going out to the ocean. You know what I mean? So they can there's a lot of houses there have a boat, have a little a boat garage in the back, and they park their boat in there.
Yeah, it's a good toy to have, isn't it?
It's
Yeah,
about
well, if you're
it's a 40-minute ride for me.
Oh, well, there you go. Why don't you come? We're going to try and have a common law court. And so anybody that can come for the common law court, that'd be great. It'd be nice to be able to set up a little network of a bunch of people that could have common law courts in New Jersey, even when I'm not there.
Yeah, I've been trying to assemble the New Jersey. It's like pulling teeth.
Well, there's actually a pretty good group in Summers Point there, too. I get their emails. And there's a pretty good group there in Summers Point. There's a bunch of people there. You just have to network and find, people that'll come. You know what I mean? But if we can get, 14, 15 people together, we're thinking about having a common law court, and we can, do some common law court, and we can see how easy it is.
Yeah, well, send me details, because I got about 10 people for that I could maybe get to come to.
All right, sounds good.
Thank
So
you
we'll
so
probably
much,
do
Glenn.
it. We'll probably do it towards the end. Probably in November, maybe on the last weekend, so that we can, have lots of opportunity to try and get people to come. It's not that difficult, So so a lot of it is just getting together and trying to. I have a proposed judgment. And of course, the common law jury decides everything. And so I would never be so presumptuous to decide what the common law jury is going to say. So if anybody has a problem with anything that's in there, then change it however you want. It's not up to me. But I have a proposed one to try and expedite things along. And so that makes it so that you can move things along as quick as possible. I've seen some of these common law juries just go on and on and on and on, and so it's better to have as much done as possible so that you speed things up. Anyways, thanks everybody for watching and for your attention, and we'll see you next week. Same time, same chat, same page, same channel. How's that?
Sounds good. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Just wanted to let you know I got something out of this for sure. Be well.
All right. Thank you. And it's a networking thing. Nobody knows everything.
Yeah. Okay, next week, Glenn, I have a quick engineering question. But I'm not going to bend your ear about that now. But you have a good night and a good weekend, and we'll talk soon.
You bet. Take care.
Night, Glenn.
The engineer question I wanted to ask him is, it works for boat propellers as well, but if you're